Hello, welcome everyone. This is Friday, September 13th, the final day of the 2024 Construction Suicide Prevention Week. And at the KCA, we wanted to pull together some industry leaders and have a discussion on this week and just kind of hear everyone's thoughts about the week, about the topic, hear about what worked and what can we do better within the industry. And I'm just thrilled and excited to have Dennis Gillan from Half a Star Foundation. He's going to kick off the discussion and he's going to guide us through some impactful conversation. Former Central Pennsylvania native for a few years, 7 years, I believe, Carlisle, right down the road. Now he resides, I believe, in good old South Carolina.
Correct.
And what little bit I know about him, he seems like an amazing person, great guy. He has a sad story, but he's making the best of it and reaching a lot of people because of his story. And I don't know if I should put it in my opening comments or if you're going to touch on your story here, but if not, I'll come back later and we'll talk more about it. But I'm assuming you're going to touch on that. So without further ado, Dennis, take it away.
All right. It's good to be back in the Pennsylvania area, be it virtually. As John said, I took a job in 89 for Merck and I moved to Mechanicsburg. Then I got married and we moved to Shippensburg because we couldn't take the big city. Um, then we moved to Carlisle where my son was born, and it was kind of neat. So I got a Pennsylvania kid out of the deal, and I love coming up there. I just recently was at Deep Creek Lake, Maryland, and I found out that the Pennsylvania High Point was just over the border. A friend of mine collects high points for East State, so that was an easy one in Pennsylvania. You could drive up to it, the hike. So I drove out, got out of the car, and I checked off another high point, and I got Maryland's high point in that same trip. But it was good to be back in Pennsylvania, and I feel like I'm among friends because Sonia, we've had a history before. We've had a conversation. Then Chris mentions a guy named Cal Bayer. Probably, I'm going to assume that's if you're doing opioids or suicide, you can mention Cal. It's Cal Bayer, and he's the guy who got me pulled into this when he heard me speak and said you got to do more with your story in the construction industry. And I said, why construction? And then he showed me the numbers. Like, ooh, that's why construction. So I'm going to share a little bit of my screen, and then it's death by PowerPoint. It's a 4-hour slide presentation. I'm kidding. On a Friday afternoon. I'm going to go over a couple, then we're going to go right back and have a conversation. Let me see if this works. High tech. I'm sharing it. Can you see it? I have to do the slideshow. There it is from the beginning. There it is. There he is with another bad haircut. That's why I'm wearing a hat.
There you go.
A
I see
journey
it.
towards recovery, and I operate under the premise that everybody's recovering from something. Is that a fair statement? Yes, it is. Everybody. It's a thing called life. But I was an accounting major when I was at WVU, the winning football team from this weekend. I hope. Oh, I hope. As long as the score is not 13-9, I'll be cool. Um, if you know the history, it's a bad one. Um, but I was an accounting major, and I used to, I call my talk, suicide stinks, right to the point, and you'll figure out why I call it that. So here we go. My name is Dennis Gillan. Suicide stinks. Thank you, John. That's all I have. 2 words. I think I nailed it, crushed it. Good. Have a good day, everybody. It's Friday. I wish I could say 2 words to get out of here, but I got to tell you how I got here. And again, back to the Cal Bayer conversation, he's the one who showed me the numbers. And these are old numbers. And I can never get really good numbers out of the government. They always put them in tables that are awful. And Son, this from data mining. All we have to know from this side is the construction industry has a high suicide rate when compared to other industries. That's all we got to know. Um, and we can do better. And we are by having conversations. And these are classics. This might be out of I spoke at Martin Marietta. It's a mining company recently. And it was interesting. I did 2 talks for them. One, there was maybe 2 or 3 women in the room. And the second one, there wasn't a woman in the room. It was just excavators. And it was good for me as a suicide prevention advocate. 80% of all suicides are men, but I need the women in the room too, because they have more attempts, 3 to 4 times more attempts. And that number, by the way, for women, because we have Sonia and Kara and on the line, Kara all the way from Wisconsin. Um, working for a company in Pennsylvania. We had a previous conversation about that, but it's the rate of increase for women went higher than the men in the last data set. So we're all in this together. But for the construction industry, you all know this stuff, that tough guy culture, the work hard, play hard. I travel a lot doing this talk, and I don't, I run a small foundation. It's a 501c3, the Half a Sorrow Foundation. And when I travel, I spend my money like, the foundation money like I'd spend mine. So I don't go to the fancy hotels. Like this week, I was in Rome, Georgia, and I was a Holiday Inn Express right off the highway. Tons of construction folks there, tons. And these folks work hard. I mean, I heard an alarm go off in the building at 4:30 in the morning. They work hard, they play hard. And talking about the play hard, so I get done speaking I was at a college, and I come back to the hotel, and I'm holding the door, and here comes a guy with one of those carts for the wardrobe cart, your luggage cart, and it's full of beer. Back to the work hard, play hard. And I just held the door. I said, "You're going to be popular wherever you go." But these guys are on the road. They're on the road. There's family separation, there's sleep disruption. That 4:30 alarm that I heard, it was right next door to me. Um, it got me up. And then layoffs. When you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not. You all know this because you live this. And we have a tolerant culture of alcohol and substance abuse. And I'm going to tell a funny story because when I was at Martin Marietta, uh, I was literally talking during the open bar. It was in the back. It just was. And then I did the South Carolina AGC meeting, and I was talking about my sobriety. And we'll get into that. It's 30 years sober. I know. Can you believe it? At WVU grad, that's sober. It happens. Um, But right during the talk, I had this guy come up to me, and he gave me an announcement. I said, we're going to do this now. It was kind of a joke, but the joke was there was an open bar from 5 to 7 after I was done speaking. So it's part of it. And I was in sales. It was part of every industry. It seems like you celebrate success with alcohol, and you add that into what Chris was talking about earlier, the opioid. Um, and that was an interesting comment, Chris, when the guy said, "Oh, so this is what it's come to." Um, I love when I speak about mental health and suicide prevention, and, heck, I touch on substances because it's all, these deaths of desperation. I love a guy like that, to tell you the truth. I want the person that tells me where they stand. I want them to be, like maybe like they got dragged to the meeting or they were voluntold to be there. I love that. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. I was at a construction meeting in North Carolina, and I felt bad for the folks that were in the meeting. It was all the managers and project planners, and they were in there. And the first part of the meeting that morning was bonding and insurance. So that's the first part of the meeting. And then the second part of the meeting for the morning was me, suicide prevention. That's a tough agenda. That's a tough agenda, right? So I'm sitting in the back, and this guy uh, points to the agenda, and he doesn't know I'm right behind him. And he looks at the guy and he goes, "I hope I don't die." And he goes, "I hope I don't kill myself during this guy's presentation." And he's pointing to mine, suicide prevention. He's pointing to mine. I'm like, oh, but younger Dennis Gillan would have came over the table, and we would have rolled a little bit, but I probably would have got my butt kicked like it always ended up. But older Dennis Gillan was like, that's the guy I need. That's the guy I want in the middle. He doesn't think he needs to be here, but we need to be here. Um, and it was a good meeting, and hopefully I got through to that guy. Uh, I never wanted to talk about this. I always deflected, and I always think about the greatest deflector. I use the slide Wonder Woman for the kids. There's your Wonder Woman. It's always going to be Linda Carter for me. It's always going to be Linda Carter. But Wonder Woman has this lasso of truth, and she wraps it around the bad guy, and it's always a guy, and the guy has to tell the truth. So let me tell you how I went from WVU, pharmaceutical sales, to mental health advocacy. How did that happen? Well, it started in Morgantown um, with my older brother, Mark. You know where this is going. You know what I do. Um, I'm one of 5 kids. If you see the upper left, that's all of us. That's Sheila, Mark, me in the middle, Janice, and Matthew. And Mark was battling depression for years. And one day, I remember the day, it was a Wednesday. I had 2 tests the next day, and I got a call from my sister Janice saying, "Dennis, you need to come home." She said, "Mark died in a car accident." That's what they told me. Mark battled depression for years. They didn't know what to tell me. They just wanted my butt home. And I go home. I remember this Wednesday night. I got the call. I got hammered. Thursday, I flew to New York, where I grew up. We buried Mark. Monday, Tuesday traveled. I was back in school Tuesday, like nothing happened. Long weekend, right? And when I get back to school, this is that culture down there, WVU, party school. I was right there. The drinking age was 18 at the time. I was 20. So I went for it. And that's a negative coping skill. Is that a fair statement? Yeah. Yeah. And here's why it's awful. I wasn't the only one doing it. That's my little brother. And you know this, you never say get worse. So when you get older, you just get wiser. Like you never say it can't get worse because it can. It absolutely can. And 11 years later, I'm living in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, 43 Wheatfield Drive. Phone rings. It's a Monday. I can remember this, and it's Janice again. And Janice, to this day, when she calls me, my heart skips a beat. And she just says, Dennis, you need to come home. Matt is gone. In a drunken stupor with access to lethal means. And 54% of all suicides are with a firearm. He's gone. So now what do I do? If I drank hard the first time, what do I do the second time? I did not do this. This is everywhere. And I speak at a homeless shelter. And when this slide came up, I should have taken it out. I was at the homeless shelter saying, I really should take this out because some folks are in here because of substance use disorder. And a lot of times when I speak, I will follow somebody who goes over opioids or someone behind me goes over opioids or drug addiction or substance use disorder, whatever it is. And there's a guy that was here in, I live in South Carolina. He went before me at a Mental Health America meeting and he went to rehab 12 times, which tells me we never give up on people. So when Chris talked about Narcan, I think I would say to these people, oh, you should only give them Narcan once. No, you give them Narcan as many times as you have to keep them alive because you never know. So this guy, Bobby Brazel, went to rehab 12 times, finally is doing better, and he's helping other addicts. So back to the homeless shelter, this slide comes up, and I'm like, oh, shoot, I should have taken that out of there. And almost to a man, they said, no, you didn't do that. I said, no, I didn't do that. Just the opposite. And this is where you want to watch the screen because look, check out the old man getting jiggy with the PowerPoint. Ooh, I decided to take a timeout. I was driving from right through Pennsylvania. I was driving from New York on 81 down to Carlisle. And I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? It's a bad news. We've all had this. We're at the proverbial fork in the road. And it was like, Dennis, what are you going to do with this? You just buried brother number 2 to suicide. What are you going to do? And I decided to take a timeout. And I'm happy to report the timeout is still going on. It's 30 years, 1 month, 10 days. I'll tell myself I got hammered the night before we put Matt to rest, the day before the funeral. I got hammered, went to the funeral, hungover, haven't touched the stuff since. And it's 11,014 days. I speak a lot of colleges. Oh, they love this slide. Like, hey, kids, don't drink. They're like, beat it, grandpa. But it's an option. It's an option. Sobriety is an option. And then I took a walk I thought I'd never take. I went and saw a counselor. So I'm going to end the program there real quick, but I want maybe see if I can pull up one slide here. I want to talk about all the resources. We have Sonia on here. I'm not going to go over all the resources, but I do want to show you this one that I'm wearing this hat. Oh, you guys are getting the Reader's Digest condensed Friday version. This hat I'm wearing, the Camel Hat Club. I went through a divorce. I know you're saying, wow, who would divorce that guy? Obviously, a lot of people. Well, once the girl I got from Pennsylvania divorced me. Um, Still friends, got 2 kids. We're all good. So I went through a divorce and I moved to this apartment in Greenville, South Carolina. And I lived in Columbia, South Carolina. And it's an hour and a half away. I might as well move to China because I didn't know anybody, but I had to change my people, place, and things. So I get up there and I started meeting these guys for breakfast, a couple of guys in my building. And we, 7 years later, we still meet for breakfast. It's called the Camel Hat Club. And at the end of the breakfast, all we say to each other is, how's your mental health? That's it. It's not a Bible study. It's not a formal thing. We're not doing a book club. It's not. If you're into that stuff, you should be into that anyway. But this is just a touch point for men. And no matter where I go, nobody minds this picture except when I'm in South Carolina, people lose their minds because I'm wearing a Clemson hat and a South Carolina shirt. It's kind of like wearing a Pitt hat and a West Virginia shirt this week. They say you can't like them both. And I say, bull crap, you can. I like them both. And I also, wherever I live, I want the team to do good so everybody's in a good mood. When I lived in Chicago, I wanted the Cubs and the White Sox to win because I wanted everybody happy. But this freaks people out. So that's what I started doing. I started speaking about suicide prevention. Um, the full on. I spoke this week at this week. I'm going to stop sharing here. I'll tell you, I spoke at a middle school, which I never do middle schools. I never go that young, but they need to hear it. I'm wearing a bracelet of a guy who gave it to me, and the dad gave it to me, and that was his 12-year-old daughter. Was past tense. 10 to 14 is one of the fastest growing groups, but it's still for the majority of it. That if you look at the 49,000 that are out there, 39,000 are dudes and 10,000 are women. That crossed over. Sonia and Karen, that crossed over at 10,000 for the first time ever. That no good. You were the smart one. You're always low in suicide. But I'm happy to see what happened. And I got a front seat to all this in the construction industry through my good friend Cal Byer. He brought me in to speak a couple times when CFMA was running with the ball, was at the Construction Financial Management Association. They picked up, God bless those bean counters, they picked up the vibe that was going on with the suicide and they ran with it. Those CMF, I spoke at a couple CFMA conferences, one in North Carolina, one in Georgia, and then it morphed a couple of donations. And Sonia, I need you to speak to this. The Prevent Suicide Group for construction is now up and running. It's your own little. Is it a 501c3? Is it a yeah,
We've been our own 501c3 since 2018.
yeah. And that's really cool to watch that because it's an industry running head on. They still say it, but I don't believe it. They said if a bear's attacking you, you're supposed to lay down and play dead. I'm like, hold on. I have to rely on my acting skills to live. That's not going to happen. The other thing you could do is run towards the bear. See, the bear's not expecting it. And I think with this problem we have of suicide in the construction industry, it's time to run towards the bear, run right at it, and do the things you're doing in this industry. And I'd like to talk to you, and then we're going to make it open mic because I don't want this to be a monologue. And trust me, I cut out like 86 slides today, so we're good. You can thank me later, folks. But the full presentation it's really good, and I got the moves like Jagger. But it's being vulnerable on stage that people come out afterwards, and all of you have done suicide prevention stuff. It's amazing. And talking about Chris, this week when you were speaking with people, the magic happens after the talk when people come up to you and tell you their story, because everyone has one. And the story in the construction industry is slowly but surely being rewritten, because we're running towards the bear that we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We're not going to try not talking about it because we tried it for years. It didn't work. It really didn't work. And it's time to keep doing what we're doing. So I do want to throw it open. This week was, World Suicide Prevention Day, Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, week. We all know on this call right now, we all know it should be every month. It should be weaved into the fabric of safety. It just is. It comes under that umbrella. So if I could throw it open to open mic, what have you all done this week or have planned for this month for your companies for suicide prevention? Open mic.
Start.
Just today on my random thoughts on construction that I do on LinkedIn, I've I've been talking about suicide prevention and mental health all off and on for the last 2 years. That John's jumped in on a couple of my posts from the past 2 years, and it is a big problem. I mean, I've lost friends from down here. I mean, I was born and raised in southwestern PA. I'm from Causal, PA. And I moved down here into Buchanan in 2006 and joined the union. And then actually, I was just back working in PA, staying at mom and dad's, and traveling from Causal into Bethel Park outside of Pittsburgh for 14 weeks. Now I'm off for a couple weeks, maybe the end of this week or the end of next week. I'll probably be back up in PA working again. But right now, I'm just trying to catch up on things at home. But yeah, when I saw thanks to John and the KCA for setting this up, it's a great place to get more like minds so we can all get together to get the word out there about suicide and opiates and because granted, the construction industry, yeah, we're all got that macho attitude where you're trying to work and you're hurt and you're taking pain pills, and it can really be a big problem.
I agree with Clyde, and obviously, our whole mission exists to be able to share resources specific to construction. And obviously for us, the conversation is 12 months of the year, but for Suicide Prevention Month, we have a whole section of our website dedicated to resources that anyone can use. We have toolbox talks, obviously, we have 5 of them. They go with the word stand. The S is for safety, the T is for training, and all the way through D. They're both in English and in Spanish. This year we decided to do something a little bit different as well, is we actually created social media graphics that we're posting, but we made them available for anyone who wants to be able to use them as well. So they're there. You can download them also in both English and in Spanish. We have ones that go with stand, and then we have already included the captions for those as well. But we also have ones that talk about the number of deaths per day by suicide in construction. We have one that talks about the warning signs. We have a bunch of other statistical ones. We have the warning signs that can be downloaded and shared as well. All of our resources are free. All of them are downloadable, and many of them you can put your own logos on as well, so that we want to make it as easy as possible for the industry to be able to have access to the information. From my team's standpoint, what we've done, this is my 7th conversation this week about this, my own. I've been in 4 states having the conversation, and my team is obviously, my board is amazing, and they're speaking about this as well. It is what all of them do in some way, either in their businesses or for their jobs. So we've really made it a big push, not just this week, but the entire month, to make sure that we're getting the word out and getting on as many podcasts and blogs and articles as we possibly can.
And I was going to ask you quick, how was the talk yesterday? Wasn't it yesterday with Cal in Pittsburgh?
It was amazing. We actually had really great turnout. There were about 40 people with CFMA Greater Pittsburgh. And we had lots of engagement, lots of people really excited to be there and be part of the conversation. It was myself, Cal, Jason Malatak from Mercedes, and Rich Jones from U-Turn Health.
Great.
Can I ask a question of the group? How many of you all have an employee assistance program at work? Because it's
I'm
sometimes
not
it's a mix.
sure about any particular companies, but I know with our local and that we try to make sure the resources are out there to all our members, and I'm sure the local 432, because I'm a carpenter out of PA, they do the same type thing. But as far as specific companies, I know Mercedes has a setup, Mascaro, AM Higley, and a couple of the ones down here in West Virginia do as well. But as far as an overall industry standard, it's just kind of coming online that more companies are starting to get resources. But with the union, we have resources that we try to make sure the members, have all that word out there.
I know yesterday I was in a webinar through Construction Suicide Prevention Week, and that was something that was recommended. I think that's like a standard baseline recommendation that every company really should be doing. It's like, you need to have an EAP, and it's not enough just to have an EAP. You need to be promoting the EAP in multiple ways, multiple times, because the more you promote it, the more people know about it in time of need. I've tracked the stats at my own family company at Health because we had an EAP before I started a year ago, but never really talked to people about it. We did improve it as well. Once I came, we took a look at our benefits and tried to look at like, what more can we do? And we did increase the package of the EAP and get an app and everything, but we just didn't really promote it before. And before I started, there was around a half a person is a weird stat to say, but like a half a referral a month, was using the EAP before we started promoting it. And then fast forward just a couple months in of me promoting it more, and it went up to 3 people a month, and it stayed pretty consistent since then. So it was a 6 kind of increase in using the EAP just by promoting it more. We do it through text, through emails, through newsletters, through social media. You know, we just promote it in multiple different ways. So I would say, like, yeah, using an EAP should be baseline standard for construction companies and promoting it. But yeah. Yeah, you have a question?
That's why I asked. It was through an EAP where I first got involved with therapy myself. My company, I lost my older brother. I'm like, I'm fine. And then I lost Matt. I'm like, I'm not fine. And we had an EAP. I was working for a Pennsylvania company. I was working for Merck in Carlisle when I decided to use my EAP. And I've had really good insurance in my life, and I've had lousy insurance in my life. I've paid cash money to go see a therapist because it's that important. Just as important as my physical health. So it was Langston. There was a company down here one time, Langston Construction. The reason I asked, it's a mixed bag sometimes. Some construction companies have them, some don't. It just is. And this guy, the owner of Langston Construction, he got talked into buying an EAP by his HR person. He likes to say, I got talked into it because he didn't want to spend the money. And then at the end of year 1, they looked at the utilization rates, and he goes, I didn't realize my guys were hurting that much. They were using it. And he said, I had no trouble renewing that contract. None.
I wanted to mention something. So my name is Sebastian, and I'm in construction through software. My company designs software for safety and compliance and risk control. But we've been very heavily involved in suicide prevention, well-being overall. And this week, actually, I had something that happened to me, which I found quite positive, in the sense that we are currently in a bid for a very large project in Camden, New Jersey, and so my company would help the GC run the safety and compliance programs over there, and we started talking about, hey, would you accept that we also include well-being resources? We point out to the 988 numbers. We have designed those banners, those vinyl banners that we give out at job sites, especially the ones where we are involved with. And they were really positive about it. They said, yeah, by all means, just any information you have, any information that you can drop through the apps or through those banners, yeah, we'd love to have them on site once we start, and if we get the job, obviously. So I found that very positive, because it shows that I think that we're getting in, finally, in construction, we're getting into that first step, baby step, that we're actually looking to, or we're actually accepting that this is a subject that we can talk about, or at least we can recognize that it exists among us. So again, I found that quite positive, and I really applaud the company that that we're working with right now, because it's I think I'm not sure if everyone would accept it. So again, that was a very positive experience this week for me.
That's great, Sebastian.
Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of a question that came up yesterday in a webinar, the webinar that I was in, and I can share more about what we did this week too at my family company. But in the Construction Suicide Prevention Week committee that Chris and I are in together, the national initiative for this specific week, there was a webinar yesterday. And one of the questions asked, I was a panelist in, was like, how have you seen the industry change? And I was in the construction industry back in 07 to 11, and then left the construction industry to try something new. And I went to healthcare IT, something completely different. And in 07, 11, I don't remember anyone ever talking about it. Like I cared about it because I lost my brother to suicide in 05, but like, it wasn't a thing that was talked about either like at my small company level, really, or like nationally or regionally. And now fast forward to now, when I rejoined a year ago, I was kind of worried when I came back, like, oh my gosh, am I going to be by myself and the only one who cares about this? Like, what's happening in construction. Like I thought it was like this big mountain that I was gonna have to climb myself. And then I quickly realized and got connected to people, like several of you on the call, that like there are so many people in the construction industry who care about this already. There's so many, even KCA, you know, as a regional trade organization, and nationally CISP and Construction Suicide Prevention Week. Like there are so many people, so many organizations that are doing things, and it's like so exciting and hopeful to see the change over the last decade of like no one talking about it in 07 and 11 to now. And it's like just part of the conversation, and it has changed the narrative, and it's really hopeful and exciting to see. I know there's still a lot of work to do, and that's why we're talking today to share lessons learned and, you know, what we've done in the week. But it's really hopeful to see that change, because it has changed.
Yeah. I made a similar comment like that to Chris on Wednesday at the opioid summit. I said to Chris that back in 2017, 2018, KCA took this path to help out in the opioid awareness campaign, and we started reaching out to companies and unions about EAPs, and they're like, "Do you guys have EAPs?" And they're like, "Yeah." Do members know the numbers? And the reps would say, "We don't even know the numbers." So, but it's gone from that to, yeah, we have it, but we don't know the number or anything, to it's accessible now so that people know the numbers. So just in the past 7-8 years, it felt like we've taken a giant leap forward. So, but we
Yeah,
still have a
there's
lot more to do. So
yeah, there's a lot of positive. I think in this space it's very important. And yeah, I've been doing this 2017 really, started in this space, but it's very important that we all, you know, first off, we're not going to reinvent the wheel. Statistics are statistics. Help is help. There is no bad help. There is no better help than that help. But just keep pushing the same initiatives all together. So if everybody's pushing the same initiatives and speaking the same thing, that's where you're going to get the biggest change. And it's been that way so far. I say that because, like I'll tell contractors, it's a sexy topic. That's the word I use. It's a sexy topic. Somebody wants to sell you mental health, well-being, you know, all this other stuff. And who's popping up and doing it? You know, who's doing it because they genuinely care? Who's doing it because they're trying to turn a dollar? And I'm not against anybody making any money, because that's how the world goes around. But at the same time, you know, the resources are the resources. That's what it is, you know. When you talk EAP, to John's point, so many don't even know. Being a union guy, my union has an EAP. Most unions do. Most union members don't know about it. Most people that have an EAP have no clue what their EAP does. They have no clue what their EAP offers. So when you do something like audit your EAP, that's huge. That's huge. So what I found within my EAP, when I started back in 2017, and I thought, you know what I'll do is I'll start spreading the word about the EAP, at least getting people to where they got to be. The first person that I sent, who really needed a trauma therapist, when I asked, you know, because when I did all my homework, you get 5 free visits, this, that, and the other thing. There's people that we hired that we were giving money to. You know, he said what his issues were. The therapist told him straight out that he was a marriage counselor. And he said, but you got 5 free visits. Let's see what happens. Well, why would you even take the 5 free visits? Now, getting into this even more in 2021, I got called by a labor union in New York City. Some serious issues. It was pretty bad. It was like 3 overdoses and 4 suicides back to back in 1 month. And the guy sought me out and said, you know, we really need to get people driving towards our EAP. When I did the back work on that EAP didn't exist. So that man was who was getting $180,000 from this union to be an EAP, who was also collecting 100 and whatever thousand a year from other entities, was living in the Cayman Islands. He had no company. So really, at the end of the day, when I started talking to the rank and file members, just going out on jobs and kicking stones, Oh, I just thought it was a misprint. I'm not going to call the union hall and let them know that I need the EAP, because what's going to happen to you? You get stigmatized. You're only calling that if you're crazy or if you have a drug problem. That's it. So now they think I'm crazy. They think I have a drug or an alcohol problem. I'm not going to work. So it wasn't that it was a fake number. That number was disconnected 3 years ago. The good end of it is it turned into a class action lawsuit. That guy had to pay back a whole bunch of people, but it doesn't dismiss the fact that people that possibly were trying to call it are gone now. And really, it only cost them money. So yeah, did it cost them money? Sure, it cost them money, but there's got to be some sort of a murder charge there as well. But you can't do anything about that. So EAPs are great. I'm in favor of EAPs, provided you know what they offer, provided they're doing what needs to be done. So the EAP, now that that's shifted within my union, they were like, well, find us something better. And I did. And I won't plug any company or anything, but I want to know when somebody needs a trauma therapist, that they're going to go get a trauma therapist. If you need a marriage counselor, go get a marriage counselor. The right tool for the right job. Don't use a wrench for a hammer. We are construction. That's a perfect scenario right there. So, get the right people where it's got to be. I had a good friend of mine watch her husband take his life in front of her. That woman needed extensive trauma therapy. And that was just through my own networking that I was able to get her that. Through the EAP, they didn't know how to handle that. Now, I don't know how to handle that. But you kind of go on autopilot and you do what you have to do. So it's really, auditing your EAPs, knowing what they have to offer, knowing who's in it, who's doing the right thing, who's pushing forward for this, who's pushing for the wellness, or who's bullshitting you, quite frankly. Putting out the same information across the country. That's huge. And people like Sonia and construction suicide prevention, it's everybody's on par. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We can only give what we know. And people like us that are on this call, we are going to be the ones that are looking into that. So we're going to be the ones that could echo this to the common worker. And if we get through to 20%, that's a big number.
And Chris, I'll add to that. You could have a really good EAP, like a legitimately good EAP. And this happened to myself. It's called a phantom EAP. Like it exists, but I couldn't get in with a counselor.
Right.
There was a list of 10 of them. And on paper, it looked great. There's 10 counselors you could pick from. I was like number 9 and I still wasn't getting an appointment because they weren't taking. So I would say just test your EAP. If you have one, and like what Chris obviously does his homework, I would test it out. Just make
Dennis,
a few phone calls. When's your next appointment?
It's no different than your
Yeah.
medical insurance. What I went through in COVID trying to find therapists for kids was disgusting. I luckily tapped into a resource. I had out-of-network therapists, and members' kids were so bad it didn't matter, but at least I had somewhere for them to go. But when an insurance company comes in and puts down this giant stack of paper and says, this is all the doctors we have, you really need to look at that, because if you start looking through that, there's doctors that aren't taking new patients. There's doctors that are out of practice. There's all of these things. And that's not just mental health, suicide, addiction. That's everywhere.
Everywhere.
So before the insurance company sells you, we have over 7,000 doctors in our network. How many are available out of 7,000 is a good question.
That's why I think what you're doing with the suicide prevention efforts in the industry, the peer-to-peer stuff, because there aren't enough mental health professionals on the planet right now. There just aren't. If I go to these colleges and I speak to these kids and they say they try to get an appointment in school, it's 5 months. The semester's over. You're done. But there aren't enough. So keep doing the peer-to-peer stuff. If you want to help set up a Camel Hat Club or something to that effect, peer-to-peer training is big, because the men and women on the job could see it way before the therapist will.
Yeah, it's the peer training that I do, it's you know, it's a half a day long or 5 hours, something like that. And I pretty much stay within the industry, and now it's a lot of first responders coming as well. And I just throw it out there, and it's amazing how many people show up. But what I know is I've given them some tools to be able to police their own. And you know, the bigger that gets to be, you know, and whether that looks like taking a mental health first aid class, those are great as well. I mean, just getting some of that knowledge into you a little bit without just popping off, oh, this and that and the other thing. You know, and like with the peer classes, I try to make them very interactive. Most of my stuff is interactive. Most of my stuff is, you know, I'll break Dennis and John apart, and then John and Sebastian. I won't have the two people always the same. You know, I want everybody to get to know each other. I don't want two people to walk in that know each other. Once I see two people walk in that know each other, you're both sitting at different sides of the room. You know, that little bit of discomfort gets you started.
The topics we deal with are uncomfortable to start with. So this, you put an opioid addiction or a suicide prevention seminar, nobody's going to show up unless we drag them in there, unless they're voluntold.
But to your
I'll tell you,
point,
Peter,
the guy that's pointing at this paper saying, you know, oh, I hope I don't kill myself during this. I've heard that so many times. Handing out hard hat stickers at union meetings. Somebody looking at me saying, I don't need that. And then it's funny when they circle back around in a way where, you know, well, I didn't mean it like that. And I'd say, I don't care if you don't need it. If you put it on your helmet and somebody else sees it, that's huge.
That's it. You're not going to see it because it's on top of your head.
Right.
Let's come back to that guy. You talk about peer-to-peer. The guy that pointed to that piece of paper and said, I hope I don't die by suicide. See, when you tell a joke, there's two people involved. One, you're the joker, and then two, the jokey, the guy next to him. So at the end of the presentation, the guy next to him comes up to me because I was trying to get that guy so hard. Every time I was making a point, I was pointing at that dude. You know, 80% of all suicides are men. I was pointing right at him. And I was hoping he would come up to me afterwards and go, we really need this. He didn't come up to me, but the guy he gave the joke to came up to me and told me that when he was working on a construction job one day, one of his buddies was giving away his tools and he said, what's up? You know, that's a sign. He was giving away his stuff. And he said the guy was suicidal and he brought him back to his house and he stayed with him. He goes, I was newly married and I show up at home with this coworker and I said, John's going to stay on our couch for a while. I said, how'd your wife take it? Yeah, she wasn't too happy, but you know, he's alive and he's alive today. And he sent me a picture. And this is years ago. He sent me a picture of the guy he saved. He literally saved the guy peer to peer. He sent me a picture of the guy walking his daughter down the aisle, which wouldn't have happened. Wouldn't have happened. He goes, this is the guy I was talking about. And he was at the wedding. So that peer to peer piece is huge.
You know, you have a very small window. You have a very small window
Yeah.
when somebody has the thought. And, you know, that window statistically is 7 minutes, right? I think we could all agree on that, the people that know about it. But, you know, keeping somebody talking, keeping them on the phone, keeping them going, you know, whether it's in person or on the phone, that's huge. And to teach that to people, because so many people, especially, you know, when it comes to addiction, I think, you know, I think I was telling John this the other day, how many times I put a guy into a recovery. And when I go to the company and I tell the boss, they're relieved. And the look on their face, I stare at them and I go, you knew. And they're like, yeah, of course we knew. Oh, we're not going to say nothing to them. Like, but they know. But we don't know how to say anything. So teach people how to talk. Teach that at least the opening.
What do you say?
Well,
Like
he's
a
getting
guy
his
in
work
Pennsylvania.
done.
I was telling John the story.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No. I was going to say I've heard like Chris was saying and told me earlier this week, and I've heard similar stories like that over the years, and people would say, well, he's productive, he gets everything done. So I didn't want to say anything. So I'm like, well, that's not a good approach.
He'll
Sorry,
be more
Dennis.
productive when he's clean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Think about that when he's clean, how productive it'd be.
John, I shared with you the story. I was at a tailgate one time, and a friend of mine from Pennsylvania, he does asphalt in Pennsylvania. He goes, Dennis, when you talk about suicide prevention, you travel around. He goes, do you go over drugs and alcohol? I said, yeah, it's a big part of it. It's, you know, there's a couple sections I go over. And he goes, good, because you need to talk about that. I goes, I got a guy at work that, you know, wasn't doing so hot with drugs. I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Did you have to fire him? And he goes, I wish I could have fired the guy. He overdosed. He died. Like he died. And he goes, I wish I could have fired him. He was a young guy, go getter, getting all the work done, John, like you said, doing everything right. But he had this little behind the scenes problem, and he's no longer with us. So it's important what we're doing in the construction industry. I'm so proud of you all for doing this.
Comes down to
Shout
how
out.
well do you really know somebody, right? You know, as much time as
Yeah,
we
everybody
spend
knows
with each
somebody.
other, you know, especially guys like Clyde that are on the road in Jersey. We're kind of like on the job, home the same night. Guys like Clyde that are out on the road for weeks, you know, you don't have much of a choice for what to do after work. There's not much of a choice. You know, and that choice is a cultural thing of drinking. And like I'll say when I talk to people, I'm not somebody in recovery, but I can guarantee you I've never made a good decision when I'm drunk. So, you know, it's just the truth. So, you know, put drinking, put lethal means there, put missing your family or whatever it might be. You know, your wife just called and your son is doing horrible in school. Your wife just called and your daughter's getting bullied. Put that on a man alone in a hotel room. And that's a ticking time bomb.
You know,
Chris, I was gonna shout you out for the opioid and substance use toolbox talk that we made together, because that I think is something that construction companies can use to talk about this issue. That's something that Chris and I put together for the Construction Suicide Prevention Week. And also the 988 toolbox, transitioning to that. Like, thank you so much for your help on that, Chris. That's something actually that my family company did the toolbox talk of with all the crews this week. So the safety managers at my family company went out for Construction Suicide Prevention Week and did the toolbox talk around 988, and we handed out hard hat stickers to everyone. And I've been sending like daily emails this week to everyone, and the safety managers said like some of the guys, like on a good note, they weren't surprised when I came out to talk about this because they've already been seeing your emails this week. So it's like, oh, I'm so glad they're like looking at their emails and they actually saw it, you know. We sent a text to people too. So I feel like it's starting to get more into the conversation and easier the more you do it. So that was kind of, yeah, hopeful to see. But that was really neat to like do a toolbox talk on what we wrote together, you know, to my family company. That was really great to spread the word this week on that.
Yeah, two big shifts that I see is the first one, I think it's important that, you know, anybody in this space echoes that you could call 988 with somebody. You
Yeah.
don't have to know what to do, but you could dial that number. I could dial that number with Kara, and I could say, I'm here with my friend Kara, and we can have a discussion. That's number one. The second that I really see hope in is when my phone rings. Not that it's a good thing, but it's hope, and it's, you know, one of my members that says, hey, I was working with so and so, and I don't think he's all right. You know, that just tells me there's vigilance out there, there's care out there, there's worry, and usually thanks so much, this, that, and the other thing in a few months. Hey, are you ever doing that class again? Yeah, I'll let you know. You know, so you know, or you want to sit and have a cup of coffee, I'll give you something in an hour. At least you'll know how to tackle an issue in some way to get some help. Right? It's no different than teaching somebody CPR or how to properly bandage something or throw a tourniquet on if somebody's like crucially bleeding, or, you know, all these things, right? When you're in a suicide situation, it's a stop the bleeding. That's what it is. You're stopping bleeding first.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I made
Well, John, we're
one
at
of
the
those.
top of the hour.
Yeah, we are. I was gonna say I made one of those calls this week. So I was telling Dennis this story this morning, how I coached youth football, and I'm glad he mentioned middle school students earlier today when he was talking. I coached youth football for 3 years, and after we were horrible, 0-30, we never won a game in 3 years, but it was awesome. I love football, and just middle school players that never played the sport wanted to try it out before high school. We had a blast. We loved it. But to make it fun, because like I said, they never played before, so we were getting blown out. I said, let's make it fun. So I bought this big chain, and after the game, we would, like, the coaches and the players, we pick the dog of the game. So the dog of the game is the one who hustles the most, who gives it his most, and we picked, the first time we ever gave it out, we picked Ryder Williams. And this week during the opioid summit, I'm looking at my Time Hop, and Time Hop is a app that shows you pictures from your day in history. So 3 years ago, I took a picture of my man Ryder. He was our dog of the game, and after the last game of that season, the 12-year-old Ryder ended up taking his life. And later that night, after showing that, I showed my wife and daughters. I said, "Oh, there's Ryder. There's my man Ryder." And then I showed them the picture, and they're all like, "Oh, when we miss Ryder." And I texted Ryder's dad, just saying, "Hey, I'm thinking of you. You want to get together? Let me know what's going on. How's the foundation?" Because they started a foundation for him, and the dad's like, "We put the foundation on hold. It's been a really rough time. I think it's finally caught up to me after a couple years. It caught up to me. It hit me really hard this year. And times are tough. So I called some of his buddies and said, "Hey, call up Ed and grab lunch with him or something." So we need to pull each other through. We're all in this together. So, but it's tough to hear comments like that. It's tough to make those calls. But you got to do it.
I do it. Well, I want to thank you all for giving me a little bit of Pennsylvania today. I needed a little Pennsylvania fix. Got to come back up there, and
We'd love to have you
full
up here.
state, but I'd love to come up there. And then we got our foundation for our name. We're half a sorrow foundation. It's an old proverb that goes like this: a shared joy is a double joy. A shared sorrow is half a sorrow. And when you start sharing your sorrows, you cut them in half. Will I ever lose the sorrow of losing two brothers to suicide? No. Half of a half of a half, it'll always be there. But I miss my brothers, but I'm really proud, looking at what you all are doing and what we're trying to do here at our foundation. They didn't die in vain. That we're gonna remember those and honor those that we lost to, be it a substance use disorder or suicide or alcoholism. And we're gonna try to prevent future occurrences by talking about this stuff. We're gonna run to the effing bear, and we're gonna scare him before he scares us.
I like that. Run to the bear. We're gonna
Run
keep
to
on
the
running
bear.
to the bear beyond this week. It's longer than a week. So absolutely. And
Absolutely.
just in closing, real quick, I highly suggest you check out Half a Sorrow Foundation. There's some good stuff on there. I'm so glad Cal Byer introduced us, and we met through LinkedIn. Can't wait to meet you in person and get you up here in Pennsylvania.
Would love
And
it.
and a few other shout outs here real quick before we depart here. Clyde does good stuff on LinkedIn with his episodes and his interviews on LinkedIn, and his not interviews, but his videos on LinkedIn. And he talks a lot about some mental health issues. Sebastian's resources on Skill Signal are just awesome and amazing, and he has so many good stuff. It shows up right on the app. Download the app, and there's mental health resources right there. Amazing, good stuff. We'll have to get all these links out, and Kara's leadership on this issue within KCA. We're so grateful for it, and you help guide us, and you do amazing stuff within your company and through the Alliance of Suicide Prevention. We're tracking you. Don't worry. We're keeping track. You're doing awesome, amazing stuff. Lucky to know you. And I think I thank Sebastian for introducing me to Chris. You brought us together in Princeton last year, and I think that's where we met Chris. And it's been an awesome friendship right off the bat. So just very amazing.
Like I said, it wasn't going to school there. It was, it was a thing. It wasn't going to school though.
Yeah,
The old Princeton days.
there you go.
The old
Somebody had to build those buildings.
That's it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
and
shout
spend
out-
that money. Yeah. Mhm.
And
Kids would be
Seth,
sitting on the grass if it wasn't for you folks.
for all the resources you get out to the industry, Seth, through the KCA Toolbox Talks. We do weekly talks on all safety issues and a lot of mental health toolbox talks. Keep it up, gang. We have a lot of work to do, but just we're taking on the bear. So look out, bear. We're coming for you.
Thank you,
Thank
John,
you,
for taking
John.
a lead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the conversation.
Putting this together.
Yeah, thanks for the
Wonderful
talk,
conversation.
everybody.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
See y'all.
Appreciate
See
it.
ya.